March 25, 1911 was an ordinary spring Saturday in New York City. The Ash Building, located at 23 through 29 Washington Place, workers at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory were beginning to wrap up their workday. The garment workers, mostly young Jewish and Irish immigrant women, were almost done with their 52-hour work week, for which they would take home between $6 and $12. In spite of recent efforts to unionize, their wages remained low, even for the time period. Just before closing time, at around 4:40 p.m., a spark ignited a scrap bin on the 8th floor. Reports would later say it was likely a match or an ash from a cigarette or a cigar that caused the fire. The robustly flammable cutting room, with its lint and fabric scraps, caught fire quickly, and by 4:45 p.m., smoke billowing out of the windows caught the eye of a passerby who alerted the fire department. A bookkeeper on the 8th floor alerted employees on the 10th floor via telephone, including the factory's owners. They were able to escape via the roof. Employees on the 9th floor would not be so lucky. There was no telephone and no audible alarm on that floor, meaning that the first knowledge of the fire that those employees had was when it arrived on their threshold. Confronted with smoke and flame, workers attempted to escape. They found the Green Street exit and stairs blocked by the fire. More disastrously, the Washington Place exit was locked, a common labor practice at the time to reduce theft and keep out union organizers, and the foreman who held the key had already fled. Desperate workers sought other exits. While some were able to get down via the elevator, this would not last. Some were able to go up the Green Street stairs to the roof and escape. Within 3 minutes, however, that staircase would also become unusable. The windows and the fire escape soon became the only avenue for escape. Workers jammed themselves onto the iron fire escape, which soon gave way with a sickening, twisting sound and sent 20 employees plummeting 100 feet to their deaths. Fire engines arrived quickly, but their ladders only reached the 7th floor. Those employees who remained trapped on the 9th floor could only jump out the windows and hope for the best. Reporter William Gunn Shepard would later describe the, quote, thud of a speeding living body on a stone surface, unquote. Witnesses stood by hopelessly, screaming and wailing as the carnage unfolded. Women fainted. Others hurled themselves at the lines of police attempting to get to the victims, and they were repelled. One of those witnesses was 22-year-old Frances Perkins, who would go on to be the first woman appointed Secretary of Labor. In 1911, she would also be appointed the head of an investigative commission into the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. In the end, 146 people lost their lives in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. It all happened in 18 minutes. The dead were mostly women, 123 in total, the majority of whom were young, recent immigrants. The youngest victims were 14-year-olds Katie Leone and Sarah Maltese. The oldest was 43-year-old Providenza Pano. New Yorkers were horrified, even in an age where workplace accidents were commonplace and labor protections nearly non-existent. 10 days after the fire, nearly 400,000 people marched silently through the spring rain in memoriam to the dead of what remains the deadliest workplace accident on record in the United States. Days before, at a public memorial service at the Metropolitan Opera House for the Triangle Fire victims, labor organizer Rose Schneiderman gave the following address. Quote, I would be a traitor to these poor burned bodies if I came here to talk good fellowship. We have tried you, good people of the public, and we have found you wanting. The old Inquisition had its rack and its thumbscrews and its instruments of torture and iron teeth. We know what these things are today. The iron teeth are our necessities. The thumbscrews are the high-powered and swift machinery close to which we must work. And the rack is here in the fire-trap structures that will destroy us the minute they catch fire. This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in the city. Every week I must learn of the untimely death of one of my sister workers. Every year, thousands of us are maimed. The life of men and women is so cheap, and property is so sacred. There are so many of us for one job. It matters little if 146 of us are burned to death. We have tried you, citizens. We are trying you now. And you have a couple of dollars for the sorrowing mothers, brothers, and sisters by way of a charity gift. But every time the workers come out, the only way they know to protest against conditions which are unbearable, the strong hand of the law is allowed to press down heavily upon us. Public officials have only words of warning to us, warning that we must be intensely peaceable, and they have the workhouse just back of their warnings. The strong hand of the law beats us back when we rise into the conditions that make life unbearable. I can't talk fellowship to you who are gathered here. Too much blood has been spilled. I know from my experience it is up to the working people to save themselves. The only way they can save themselves is by a strong working class movement, unquote. In 1913, the owners of the Triangle Fire were brought to trial for manslaughter, were acquitted of the charges. In a civil settlement, they ended up being ordered to pay $75 per victim. In $25, that's about $2,500. The owners of the factory received $60,000, or about $400 per victim, in compensation from the insurance company. That's about $2 million in 2025 money. That same fall, one of the owners was again caught locking his workers in. The Ash Building, now named the Brown Building, still stands in New York City. It's a registered historical site. The oldest survivor of the Triangle Fire, Rose Freeman, died in 2001 at the age of 107. A mentor of mine once told me that every single labor law and regulation is written in blood. The blood Schneiderman spoke of, the blood of 146 garment workers, would write the labor laws many of us take for granted. In 1912, over 24 laws regarding worker safety were passed in New York, many of which would eventually become part of the New Deal during the Great Depression. Those reforms would lead to the formation of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, in 1970. It is OSHA that guarantees the fundamental rights of workers to safe working conditions, including access to fire escapes, the presence of fire alarms, the prohibition of locking egress doors during working hours, and the right to seek redress when injured, among hundreds of others, that most U.S. workers enjoy every day without ever noticing. What would Rose Schneiderman say today, witnessing the exploitation of nearly invisible immigrant labor that continues more than 110 years after her time? What would she say about ICE raids of workplaces staffed with undocumented laborers who are summarily disappeared? What would she say to the attempts to roll back federal regulations for worker safety and to the closure of OSHA offices? What would she say about the appalling conditions garment workers still endure in overseas factories in order to feed our hunger for fast fashion? If the victims of Triangle Fire tried us good people of the public today, would they still find us wanting?